the whole clap back movement. Like anybody that's talking about how you need to get one over on the person that you were with last, like guys have played this game for ages and now girls are doing it as well. And like fair play, it's people can do whatever they want, but we should be very, very, very careful with how we throw tradition out of the window, because a lot of the time it's there for a very good reason. And it's going to take us so long to get back there, to get back to, is it maybe a good idea not to sleep with the person on the first date? Like every time. Is it maybe a good idea to not do it every time that you go out dating? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, is that even but to say that now, it's like, well, guys can do it. I'm like, well, no, maybe for guys as well. Maybe for guys as well, it's not a fantastic idea to do it on the very first time that you go out. Now, all of the best relationships that I've been in have been ones where there has been more game playing at the beginning. There has been more like of a courting period that builds you up to it. And you've had Gad Saad on, right? He would know this from an evolutionary perspective. What is the signal that you are giving to your potential mate if you give up sex easily as a woman and as a guy, but specifically as a woman? Throughout all of human history, men have been the sexual protagonists and women have been the sexual gatekeepers. Why? Because the cost of having sex is significantly higher for women than it is for men. And even if you're not having sex to make children, that context still continues. That is always going to be the way that it is going to be. And if you are a girl that's listening who wants to get into a relationship, I think it's so fantastic that that's happened for you. But I'm going to guess even you must have thought, fuck, like I rolled the dice there. And this kind of came out to now this amazing relationship and I'm super happy and we've got this child and everything's going well. But it could have gone the other way. It could have signaled something that maybe wouldn't have been so good.
No, I agree. I'm someone that believes in fate. So I also think that some of those things happen that are outside of your control. And if you're kind of living on your path, for a lack of better words, and that's when things start to happen for you and not to you, kind of mentality. But
yeah,
I also know there's definitely a narrative with my generation or our generation of people not wanting to settle down and to have families. I don't know really anyone that has kids. Most of my friends are still single. And we're all, almost all of us are in our 30s. And to me, that's kind of crazy because when in history has that happened? And I know for me, it's kind of lonely because you do want people that are at similar life stages at you to share your experiences, like what you're going through. Like there's things that only a parent knows, or there's things that only a married couple knows. I think it's really silly when we say that there's no difference between marrying someone. So many people say that too. They're like, oh, it wasn't any different once we got married. I was like, I felt such a shift. It was very different. I mean, we still lived together before. It's almost like, I mean, it's going to sound overly simplified, but it's that obvious commitment. It's like, this isn't we get into a fight and I kick you out and now we're broken up. There's going to be paperwork. There's going to be lawyers. I live in the South. So when you get divorced, you actually have to be separated for a year before you can divorce. You can't just divorce. Even in domestic violence, that's how strict it is. It's like they want you to go to counseling to try to fix the marriage. It's not, you can't make a rash decision. So there's that level. And then when someone decides to say, I'm going to try to be with you until we're both old, gray, and one of us dies, right? Like there's something beautiful and romantic about that. It's not like I'm just here so long as things are easy, fun, and sexy. It's like I'm here for when things get ugly, and I'm here for things when things get old and boring, and we just want to sit across the table and not talk. There's just that level of commitment that cannot be there without marriage, in my opinion. Unpopular take.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
And look at what that is. It's symbolic, it's sacred, it's tradition, Mm-hmm. Like that's what people are missing. And I don't know, I'm so conflicted about it because I love all of the trappings that we've got with modernity. I love the fact that we have that women can choose to be anything that they want to be, that they can decide to have a career or they can decide to have children. But the decision of whether or not to have children or have a career is a really difficult one. And now every woman has to make that choice. Previously, although the choice wouldn't have been there, and that might feel constricting, at least they would have never had the turmoil of having to do it. Now, I'm not for like sending women back to the house and taking them out of the workplace. My point is that this is a difficult discussion to have. Mm-hmm. It's a nuanced and uncomfortable place for everybody to be, because your biological imperative as a woman is to have children. The only way that you're here is because every one of your mothers had you, or had the one that came before you. That's the only way that it works. So there's like a very, very strong biological impulse that is continuing to pull us through this. And the same thing goes for the marriage. Like, yeah, maybe you can get all of the same legal protections and you can own the house in the same way, but there's something about the ritual, the sacredness of actually going through, having the family there, thinking about it, planning the wedding, why do we have any sort of ritual at all? Like, why do people celebrate Christmas? Why don't we just celebrate Christmas in the middle of June? Well, it's because it's on that date, and you go through the rigmarole of making the food and putting the tree up and all of these sorts of things. And again, we should dispense with those traditions at our peril.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point too, because in my generation growing up, it was very girl power. There was a lot of that feminist dialogue going on, that you can have everything that you want. You can have the baby, the family, and the rock star career. And I think a lot of us are realizing it's not that simple. And then we were also told that biological clock wasn't real. I know that was the narrative from a lot of people that were around me. And I kind of always knew I wanted kids, so I didn't really fall into that I'll have kids when I'm 45 thing that they tell you is an option. But what's interesting is I don't think there's enough of that conversation happening with women specifically. It's, you can have it all. Focus on your career until you are where you want to be in your mid-30s, and then go have a family. But the truth is, at 30, it starts to tank. Like, your fertility tanks. And that's assuming that your health is perfect, that you're going to the gym, you're eating right, you don't end up getting any ailments like an autoimmune disorder that might make it even more difficult. And they're like, oh, well, there's always IVF. Well, if you don't know someone that's gone through that process, it's really painful. It's not guaranteed. It's hard for both parties, because the woman gets really hormonal and she's getting stuck with needles every day. And that's not really the magical way that you want to conceive if you have a choice, right? So you see a lot of older women that pass that window and they're like, shit, I wish that someone had told me the truth. I wish I at least had made an informed decision about whether or not I could have the career or the family. And it's not to say it doesn't exist. I have both, but I think I'm a kind of an exception in that role, because I get to work from home and obviously make my money that way. So if I were in the real world, I think it's, what is it, like 40%, it might be higher, of women that have children don't go back to the workforce. It's a pretty substantial number. And that's because it's really difficult and it's really expensive.
Is that right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it might seem like a dated conversation, but for a lot of women, they kind of do have to choose. And I think that there needs to just be more open conversation so that they don't have regret either way, when they're older and they can't go back in time.